there's sometimes when you're playing time and you're in that groove, you're given gifts. Like there's ideas that come to you that you just kind of go along with. And that's everything. That's with music, is to go into that zone and try and create and record and remember these things that happen. They definitely happen sometimes. Beats, interesting grooves, like catchy stuff, like it just comes in your head. But you have to be playing drums for them to happen. But I certainly didn't be like, hey, I'm going to write this down and then try and play it. You have to start to play, and these things just come to you. And either you think you're a genius and they're all just, you're doing everything. And people are like that too. They think they're creating this stuff that's like only them, and it's because they're doing it that it happens. But in the bigger picture, it's like this stuff is just kind of, it's fruit and food just piling up on your plate, and it's up to you to kind of sort it out and make something from it. But like, it's always, it's like, it really is like plugging into an Ethernet or some massive bandwidth, because you can feel everything, every opportunity, every possibility. When you're playing it, you can hear where things can go.
And welcome to another installment of Behind Greatness by Inspire. It's Luciano here speaking as your host. Before we get into it, a quick reminder for our listeners: please subscribe, rate us if you can, share with your family and friends. Like I always say, this is the way we grow. And also, last quick reminder for anybody who feels inclined to donate, because we are a charity and we issue tax receipts. Just go to our website, behindgreatness.org, and you see where you can do that. We've been getting a good amount of donations of late, and we want to thank you once again, listener, for that support. Thank you for coming on board and for your auditory companionship, because today we have another very interesting human being. And we're going to talk about something that we haven't discussed in a while on the podcast. So I am doubly excited. His name is Jeremy Taggart. Jeremy is a drummer, a musician, a broadcaster from Toronto. He was a member of Our Lady of Peace, which is a rock band, still, 1993 to 2014, selling over 5 million albums, winning all kinds of awards, Much Music Awards, Juno Awards, and countless tours in North America and Europe. He drums and mentors artists like the Arkells, Geddy Lee from Rush, Tom Cochrane, a multitude of other artists. He's also a broadcaster, so including his own experience of his own podcast, Taggart's Take, and he co-hosts on The Edge in Toronto as well. He's also a co-host of the Taggart and Torrance podcast, a long-serving podcast here in Canada. He's worked in radio stations, TSN 1050 and News Talk 1010 for a few years until 2018. Jeremy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. I'm really, I was looking forward to it, and I've heard a lot of great things, and I appreciate the conversations we've had leading up to this. So
me too. No, thank you. I actually want to thank two people. One formally, Mike Ben Dixon, who put us together. Who's been in broadcasting in Canada for, I don't know, like a century.
Decades, yeah.
And he's still younger than us. I think he looks younger than
true.
us.
I think he is, yeah.
And the second person is my brother. It's my youngest brother, who's 5 years younger than me. The reason why, I think I mentioned this in another episode. So I was in the early 90s. Very, very quick story for you and the listener. Early 90s, I was really getting into grunge rock, and then the rock that came out of that movement from the early 90s. So I was Pearl Jam, STP, Metallica as well, all over, Soundgarden. And I came upstairs to get changed and went to my room, and I heard this music blaring in the hallway coming from my brother's room. I went in and he had the CD on. What is that? Never heard this. Like I thought myself the authority in the house on current rock music. It's a new group, Our Lady Peace. that's a pretty cool sound. Like, how come I don't know? He goes, oh, it's a Toronto band. This is what I said. Toronto? What? Yeah. And that's it. So I want to thank him. And I don't know if he listens to, well, no, he listens to the podcast, but I'm not sure if he listens to all of them. But thanks to him, because he got me on. That was 1994. So in 1994, you were like barely 20 in the band.
Yeah. 19.
19. Yeah. So it would have made him like 14 or 15.
Same age, pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, it's a high school apart.
Not so. So I want to get into that in a few minutes, but very quickly. You were a baseball fanatic, and you probably still are, I'm assuming.
I love it. Yeah.
Why?
I love it because it's the simplicity of it. It's how hard simplicity of the concept, but I mean how difficult it is. To me, still to this day, out of all sports, I'd say the hardest thing to do is hit a pitch from a major league pitcher. You know, Shohei Ohtani, for example, to see a ball like that come at you and you have to hit it, and then you have to hit it 3 out of 10 times, or else you don't get a gig, right? So baseball is difficult, and that just it's pretty hardcore when it comes to that stuff. So that's why I love it, because it's a beautiful sport. It's also just the history of it is great in terms of culturally in America. I mean, it kind of rides up with how everything became popular, from the national anthem to, you know, getting people together in public has a lot to do with baseball.
It's people forget, correct me if I'm off here, but baseball is as old as what we call in North America soccer, more or less, right?
Yeah, like 1850s, around that time is when it started. And then they actually were having games in the late 1800s, and really kind of formulated in the early 1900s with the American League and then the National League, and then them combining. So all of it's mostly just culturally in places like New York and Chicago and Boston. It was just so integral to people going out and being social. Because before that, like, when did you get together other than in pubs and bars? You know, just to have tens of thousands of people together for such a joyous kind of occasion, it really helped develop social aspects of a lot of things in America.
Your dad was Scottish. Let's go a little bit to your background. Your dad was Scottish, and your dad was a drummer. You didn't play drums until later on, but your dad was a drummer.
Yeah. My dad was a professional drummer in the Yorkville scene in the 60s and 70s. Yeah.
Yorkville
jazz.
in Toronto.
Yeah, he loved jazz. That was his favorite music. Mind you, it wasn't a ways to make cash. So he did a lot of cover band stuff and playing more rock stuff. But yeah, he was, that's what he did for, I guess, 12, 15 years or so.
He came to the US first before he went to Toronto.
Yeah, he grew up in Glasgow and then moved to the Bronx, New York, in like 1953 or 55, around that time. So he lived in New York for about 10 years or around that time, and came to Toronto in the early to mid 60s. And that's when he started playing drums, was in Toronto.
Then he gave it up right away. Or not right away, but he gave it up suddenly.
He did it until 79, and he didn't have a New Year's gig, and he always had issues with frustration and anger. So one of my earliest memories is hearing him tearing up the drums in the basement at 4 years old or 5 or something, just hearing the noise of him literally smashing his stuff to bits. It's not easy to break a drum set.
No kidding.
Like, cymbals smashed up, the cymbals broke them, cracked them all. Just everything was destroyed. And he never played again. It was pretty traumatizing. for him and the rest of us. But I guess he kind of fought that his whole life. He had a lot of problems with, I don't know what it was, whether it was self-belief or self-love. His father was a hardcore alcoholic and beat his mom a lot. So he had a lot of issues growing up, seeing a lot of abuse in front of his siblings and his mother. So I think he saw a lot of stuff that probably needed therapy from a young age and never got it. And so he just had a lot of problems. Like, he would have a great idea and he would start doing it and it would be great. And then he would just self-destruct and destroy it, whether that be art or books or board games or like so many these interesting ideas where he'd do it and he'd finish it and it would be great and people would start talking about it, and then he'd get in a bad mood one day and tear it all up. So I don't know. I'm sure you hear these about those types of people when you see very intelligent people that don't have certain abilities in their self to control their emotions. And it generally happens with hyper intelligence, that kind of where they just lose it and they have tantrums that are not unlike they're 6 years old.
You were the youngest of 4 siblings, and you were explaining to me you didn't have the easiest of childhoods. You went to 6 different schools from kindergarten to grade 8 alone.
Yeah. A lot of running around, rental family, chain. My dad worked in Rexdale and my mom would, do dispatch or whatever job you could find. And it was just, we didn't have a lot of money, and that was an issue, I guess. It was kind of like, it was difficult. We never went on vacations. We didn't go out to dinner, to restaurants. And we hardly ever sat at the table to eat dinner. Like, it was just different kind of bringing, So when I start explaining it, it's like, yeah, it's definitely not like a normal thing, like the daily routines, we kind of joked around as my siblings. We all say, like, we didn't really have parents. Like, there was no talks, no birds and the bees. No, it's just like, hey, we all live together and we're peers. That's pretty wacky.
It seems, though, that you did learn something, or 2 things that I took away from one of the chats that we had is the love for your siblings never went away. It seems like you guys are really bonded with all of them. And baseball. So baseball was you said it was your continuity. Like, it kept everything together. It was stable for you.
Yeah. I think because my dad would practice with me every single day, and we worked really hard from a very young age, like 4 years old to 16, just practicing 5 days a week and working really hard at it, and just kind of having a routine and starting it and finishing it. So that definitely helped me in terms of learning. When I started playing drums, I just took that mentality of, well, let's just work as hard as we can. And you see the development in something that, you can start playing a beat that you don't know how to play. If you start practicing it for an hour or two, it starts to feel pretty good after an hour or two. But if you try playing a beat for 5 minutes and you're like, this is getting boring. It's really super boring. And it's like exercise, I guess, where you're like, there's nothing I hate more than doing this right now. But that's the only thing to get better. It sucks, but that's the only thing. Like, I still, to this day, I'll hear something and I'll be like, I want to learn that. And it just sounds so infantile. And you almost kick yourself going, what am I doing bothering to try this? But if you really push it and learn and work, it actually starts to come into fruition. But man, that's the only thing definitely that I really respected about my dad was he would, like, if he practiced something, he would go, like, he used to play tablas, and he would go into a closet and play for 7 hours on a Saturday straight. Sometimes longer, take a break and go back in there if he was just trying to capture, work on something, complete an idea, whatever. He just instilled that, like, hearing something monotonous and just constant.
I want to show the listener the changeover to drums. Like you played serious baseball. So with your dad, you played all the time. You practiced all the time. You told me that you practiced more than any of your other teammates because this was going to be your ticket.
Yeah. Well, both my parents were instilling that.
You were training at one point. You were training with the Atlanta Braves, which is, like, at that time they were like one of the top teams in the world.
Well, I mean, I went to a scouting camp, scouting tryout for their farm system in Toronto. Yeah, but I mean, still, it was good. It went well, and I had some good information. But at that time, I was literally 16, 17, and I had just kind of got sick of baseball for a lot of different reasons. One of them being that I was just falling in love with the drums because I just started at 14 and I was wanting to do it full time. And you know how it is when you're into something. And that's basically, if you're a kid, you jump up and down for a toy at Christmas. Like,
what'd your dad say when he saw you pick up? So you found sticks, right?
Yeah, I found a pair of drumsticks in Barrie in 1989.
North of Toronto, the city north of Toronto.
In the spring, yeah. Just probably around prior to my birthday in April, or probably just before that. It was just spring because I know that it was kind of still chilly. But I found these drumsticks in the back parking lot of the building that we were living in, and they were taped up. And I just felt this energy when I picked them up. And I went upstairs and I was like, "Hey, Dad, check these out. I want to teach me how to play." And he was literally like, "What the fuck are you talking about? What do you do? What?" Like, he was not cool with me playing drums at all because, he was counting on baseball. And at this time I was still heavy into baseball at 14.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't like saying one or the other. He was just like, "What are you doing that for?" And like, cause I guess thinking it was a bad idea for him to play because he wasn't successful, just because he, wasn't getting gigs as much and had to get a more difficult job to sustain the family. Right. But he was definitely mortified. But I think because he could see how into it I was, because it was different. He had shown me rudiments and stuff like, 5 or 7, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. And I tried it and didn't really care. I always liked drums, but I didn't really get into it at a young age. But there was a difference when I was 14. I just felt like this is something, it was just more intriguing to me. So he said, "Well, if you're going to do this, then you have to take the idea that listen to these drummers that you like, but like try and be better than those drummers, or at least as good, or don't bother." So he kind of, he gave me a practice pad and he said, "If you wear this out, then I'll buy you drums or whatever." And it was just like a really thick rubber kind of foam.
Yeah.
That I wore a hole into it, threw into a book that he taped
Nice.
up. So I got this shitty drum set and ripped off by some guy on whatever Kijiji would be, the buy and sell newspaper in Barrie at the time. And we bought these mismatched hand painted drums that were single headed and just like absolute junk. Like there wasn't even a layer of they put vinyl on the outside of a drum.
Yeah.
Like these drums are all hand painted, but like they put a, like those Ludwigs with the cool blue oyster fin that wraps they would put on. Like these things were just flat black with a brush painted, mismatched, shitty drums. They were all like, and the cymbals were like pie plates, like not even real cymbals. Like they were just like copper. Like the guy just couldn't find nothing. I never since have I seen such a piece of shit drum set for like whatever $300 or something at the time, which is
That's
a lot
expensive.
of money for
yeah
these shitty drums. Yeah. So,
but you smashed on them.
But I had to have them because they were the closest thing. I knew that if I got them, then I could actually start to play right now. So I didn't give a shit what they were. They were so bad that I was glad to throw it all out. I never wanted to see it again when I could, when I got my first kit.
But that it still helped you
it did,
with your discipline.
They were so bad though that I was like, the sight of them was just like, I don't know, like if you lived in a tenement or something and it was disgusting, would you really want to go back in there and like hang out and say, yeah, this is where I used to sit? Like, no, you're like, that was fucking like being inside of an asshole. Why would I go back in there?
All right, so the picture's been painted. So you banged away at those for a little bit, and then you were 17 and you found yourself auditioning for OLP.
Mm-hmm.
You were 17. The other band members, including Rain. So Rain was also, for the listener, Rain is the lead singer, and he was also on our podcast, like episode 65, 64. They were all in their 20s, and you were competing against like 100 people.
Yeah.
But there was something there. Like I've heard this story before from others and also from you, obviously. But there was something there that they caught on. What happened? What is it that they caught on?
I think it was because they weren't great at their instruments, and I was just getting pretty good at the drums for 17, or with just been playing for 3 years. I had some feel, and I could play solid beats and stuff. So I think once we started playing, it just felt pretty good. I don't know, maybe the other guys were like too good or something. The other 100 dudes that were just coming in, and maybe it was too much flash, or I think that it just kind of made sense that they dug it because it was solid, but it wasn't like, and different, but I definitely have my own feel and my own sound, and it relates well to mid-tempo rock music, you know what I mean? So the producer, Arnold Lanny, at the time literally was like, you got to hire this kid. So that's how it went down. It was just kind of, I went in, it felt pretty good, like there was a chemistry when we were jamming. And that's the thing, like we didn't play songs. Nobody even knew, like, let's play Sweet Home Alabama. Nobody knew how to play a song. So we were just jamming riffs.
Amazing. So this is 1990, 91?
No, this is 93, spring 93. Of 93.
Okay, 93. Yeah. So a year later, you came out with that album. Is that right?
Yeah.
The first one?
Naveed.
Yeah.
We literally, like that spring, we started to write as soon as I was 17, I turned 18, and like by the time I was 18, we were like in a rehearsal space writing Naveed, and in this warehouse in Mississauga, we were just like writing. That was it. Like we just started writing that first record, and the Sony deal happened like as I joined, and we hit the ground running. Really, it was like a little independent deal, 7-album deal from Sony, and we started paying ourselves like $150 a week, and I was like, fucking right, that's way more than I've ever had in my life. So it just was really an exciting time for me as a kid.
Sure.
Because I was like, this is what I wanted. I just wanted to play drums and go on the road and get better at my instrument, and I think that probably intrigued them, as opposed to like maybe some of the other guys that were just more like there's maybe they didn't want some guy who was just going to go get banged up every night.
Well, so you were a kid, you were below the drinking age, obviously, in the US, which is 21, and Canada is 19.
Yeah.
And I mean, it didn't sound like you wanted to be a star. It just sounded like you wanted to be a drummer, period. So
exactly.
You go from 17 in 1993 to like 5, 6, 7 years of like stadiums all the time.
Yeah. And I was ready to go and do cruise ships or play at Holiday Inn lobbies. I didn't give a shit. I just wanted a gig, and it was perfect that it worked out where these guys were they wanted to make music, and we wanted to kind of create a body of work. And that's what we started doing. And we developed as a live band that first year, and we toured enough to develop, like, we had the awesome opportunity with having a label that we had tour support, so we could go out and slug it out and not, die. Because nowadays, if you don't have tour support, you can't go out and promote your album. It costs too much money. It's thousands of dollars a week just to go out and be on the road, because you're going and playing bars where you're getting literally hundreds of dollars. Mm-hmm. And you need support to go out there and build a following. If you don't have a following, then you generally can't get anything going on. That's why nowadays you don't see people getting signed unless they have millions of followers already on TikTok or whatever, So
let's get into that side too. So I want to mention that I went on YouTube and I wanted to see some early stuff like concert work. You guys were playing away. The song I was listening to was Superman's Dead. And I remember really loving that song in my early 20s too. But you were playing in this concert, and guys and girls who were singing the lyrics. And I mean, for me in my 20s, watching something like that or being something like that was completely normal. Now I'm looking at it like an alien. Like I don't see 20-year-old guys and girls singing to this kind of music. I don't see anybody actually amassed in tens of thousands of numbers listening to rock bands really anymore. It must be a different kind of experience when you are on a stage playing what you love playing, and you have people in union, in communion, in unison, singing the music that you've written and now performing in front of them.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's why you do it. And that was one of the best parts about being in Our Lady Peace, was our fans would scream every word. They knew everything. So it makes it fun, makes the shows great. I mean, Pearl Jam, you go see a Pearl Jam show, that's still inherent. People just sing every single word to everything. And I was actually surprised that I didn't know a lot of the songs, because, they put out so many albums and their set list is so diverse. They'll play songs from all over the place. And I felt kind of like left out a little bit by not knowing the words. So yeah, it's when you see a concert and everyone knows everything, it's like you feel like you're in a club, or if you feel like you're kind of a square in a circle, if it's the opposite, right? And you're like, I'm missing out on this here.
Well, let me go back to the question, because maybe I didn't ask it right, but now that you're explaining it this way, I think I know why I didn't ask it right. So you just gave me another dimension to the question.
Okay.
So listening to Pearl Jam, I bet there were a lot of 40-year-olds there. Maybe
sure,
50-year-olds, right?
100%. It was that demographic that grew up with them. It wasn't like 12-year-olds. Yeah.
But there is something really powerful in remembering your late teens, early 20s as an older man or woman, right? Like there's something, there's I was going to say nostalgia. What the hell is the word in English? Nostalgia.
I was like, oh, it sounds like nostalgia.
Yeah, nostalgia. It didn't come to me. So stupid. There's a nostalgia there that's like, it seems permanent, and it's special. Like around that age, is something special about a musical experience, learning. I don't like that kind of live music that you were involved in, because you were the same age, even at that age. I don't see that happening anymore with the 18, 20, 22-year-olds. I see digital music and not live music. And I don't see them in, I mean, maybe I'm overemphasizing. I don't see a lot of live music in venues happening very often either. Number one, am I off? And number two, why isn't there more live music happening now?
Well, I think you're a little bit off, because there are lots of young bands that are successful and play arenas, like even bands that I don't like Greta Van Fleet. I don't like them, but they pack arenas, and there's younger people there.
Sure.
At these, okay. There's definitely bands that are still doing it, but the pop and the hip hop and like the really mainstream artists that are, well, it's different, because I'm starting to see it. Like maybe 5 years ago, you didn't see bands with all these pop people. Now they all have bands, and they're actually live, super live bands. Like if Harry Styles, for example, like his band is crushing it, like all great musicians, and it feels like a more live concert experience. So I think more artists are leaning towards that, because they know that there's so much more emotion when you see someone performing on their own instrument. It adds to the performance if they're great. So it makes it easier to be great live if you have great musicians with you, and instead of all tracks and it's just you with dancers. You know what I mean? Like that shit gets old.
So your opinion, what is it about live music that makes it more charged?
Well, I think it's amalgamating. Is that a word? But like it's becoming something it's a little bit of the old with the new. So I think that's a good thing. Whereas like 5-10 years ago, it was just an artist with a mic and the light show and all that stuff. Where like Justin Bieber has a huge band, and they're all wicked players. Like there's so many artists that, I don't know, your Taylor Swifts or all these people that are completely mad, Dua Lipa, they all have bands that are crushing it. So I think it's I can't believe that I'm saying that it seems like it's more healthy than it was in terms of like a live performer. Like there were more machines being used 10 years ago than there are now at live shows, even though they're still playing to tracks as well. Mm-hmm. There's just more vibe happening. Billie Eilish is another one, like wicked band, like crazy drummer, and like it's exciting. It really adds to the show to have these really popular artists, but also like you're getting your mind blown by the guitar player or something for 5 minutes.
Why does it blow your mind? Why does it listening to the guitar player or that drummer blow your mind as a listener?
Because they're awesome musicians. That's why. It's like, it's no different than you see someone who's a good ventriloquist or whatever, like they start doing it. You're like, hey, cool, I'm interested. You know what I mean? Like, even if I don't like it, it's like, that's talent right there. It's undeniable. You know what I mean? Like if somebody can do card tricks that are really good, you're like, wow, that was impressive. That's the same thing at a concert. Like, yeah, you want to hear the Dua Lipa singing along, or the huge pop song, but if they can add some depth by having great performers involved with that just kind of makes it better. That's why it's there. People have figured out that if you want to maximize on every level in a live performance, a human emoting on their instrument is better than just pressing a button on a keyboard.
When you watch some of these drummers, and then of course I got to watching you, I'm telling you for the first time, I watched some of your playing on YouTube too. When I watch drummers play, there is something that's more than just automatic there seems to be like a natural sense of doing things when you're playing drums, because it's so raw, it's so bare bones in terms of rhythm, but the way body moves. What was your experience? What has been your experience as a drummer when you are in full flight, when you are actually playing? What is it that you are feeling or experiencing?
Well, it's kind of like when I'm playing time, like if I'm playing a groove that feels good, it's kind of like being on a wave, like surfing, where you're doing it and you can do it, but there's also something else that's happening where it's the wave, you can't control that, but you know how to ride it. And it feels like there's like being on a train or whatever, that feeling, you're creating, you're getting energy from the groove itself, or the wave. You're kind of you try to maintain it, but at the same time, there's an element of like, there's something bigger than you that's involved with it when you're playing it, and the better you get, the bigger that connection is with time. And like the actual, when you're on a groove and it starts, it's bigger than everything, and you're connecting to it. So it gives back as much as you give to it, in a sense.
So you said it's like, I want to stay on that. It's something bigger than you. So I want to try to understand that from somebody who's played this. And I think what's really more important for me is that you've been feeling these waves while you are playing in front of tens of thousands of people. So there's got to be some sort of, everything is aligned for like an extraordinary experience. You said it's like communication with something that you haven't had previous access to, and all of a sudden you're getting downloads.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's sometimes when you're playing time and you're in that groove, you're given gifts. Like there's ideas that come to you that you just kind of go along with. And that's everything. That's with music, is to go into that zone and try and create and record and remember these things that happen. They definitely happen sometimes. Beats, interesting grooves, like catchy stuff, like it just comes in your head. You have to be playing drums for them to happen. But I certainly didn't be like, hey, I'm going to write this down and then try and play it. You have to start to play, and these things just come to you. And either you think you're a genius and they're all just, you're doing everything. And people are like that too. They think they're creating this stuff that's like only them, and it's because they're doing it that it happens. But in the bigger picture, it's like this stuff is just kind of, it's fruit and food just piling up on your plate, and it's up to you to kind of sort it out and make something from it. But like, it's always it's like, it really is like plugging into an Ethernet or some massive bandwidth, because you can feel everything, every opportunity, every possibility. When you're playing it, you can hear where things can go, and they can go anywhere, man. That's just, you can go up, down, slow it, speed it up without changing the tempo. Like there's so many different things with rhythm that make it kind of like a true linear experience, where you kind of have to be completely open and accepting of energy and laws that you have no idea about. And that's the best way to play.
Amazing. So so much to get out of that. You said you're given gifts. It reminds me of a conversation that we had with Wynton Marsalis, who's a trumpet player, but also like one of the most renowned jazz musicians.
Absolutely.
Like in the last
family,
like
historic years. Family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, brother, father. So we had him on the podcast, and he said, there's something that he said, because we talked about how is it that, I mean, you hear flow state all the time. Like, I don't know what flow state is. That's a description, I think, that's it's poor. I want something more. I want to hear more from people who actually feel that. So this is why I ask you this question. So he said, it comes at you whole. It's whether you can hear it or see it that matters. It doesn't come at you pieces. It's already, excuse me, it's already there.
Mm-hmm. And you have to really push it's like playing Battleship. You got to bomb around and then figure out, okay, that's where it is. You bomb around that and then, oh, that's where that is. Like you're trying to poke holes in everything, but you're like, okay, I've assembled what that idea is. Because you'll hear things about a groove or things about a beat that's like, this is cool, but it could be cooler. Or something will happen just by mistake, and then you're like, wait a second, that accent changes everything in terms of the way it makes the groove feel. And that's the same with writing a guitar riff or a horn line. Like it has to be catchy and memorable and all of these things, but at the same time, it has to be kind of, I don't know, it's always at its best when it's just completely original, like the way Neil Young plays guitar. He might make mistakes, but the concept he has is I'm really riding this out and I'm just trying to, see where it goes. And he gets off on that, That's why those kind of artists like that they're still successful. Tom Waits, people that just do what they do only and might sound weird to others. They don't give a shit because that's not even why they're doing it. They're doing it just because it fulfills them, and they have to. They have no other choice because it's just in your head to complete these fucked up ideas.
Well, it's somewhat, maybe it's stretching it, but maybe not. It's somewhat like hitting a fastball, right? Going back to the baseball analogy. When you're hitting that ball, when you're on the other side as the hitter and you see this thing coming at you from 60 feet away at 100 miles an hour, spinning in a certain way, in a certain direction, like time has to stop. You have to know how to stop time and be present in order to make contact with that thing.
Well, for example, the last person to hit 400 was Ted Williams in 1941 or whatever it was.
Yeah, 400 right? Meaning 4 out of 10 times you can hit a ball.
Yeah, 406 he hit. Yeah, he hit 406, and it's never going to happen again. No. But the bottom line is he had incredible vision. Like he said, he used to be able to read like the fine print of records when they're spinning.
Oh. Wow.
And he just had like probably better than 20/20 vision. So it makes sense that the guy, he had airspeed records as a pilot in the military just for his couple years off in the middle of his prime. Everything that the guy did, like imagine you probably have to have pretty good vision to be an amazing pilot, right? Especially back then. You
also have to be fearless.
Yeah. So... great vision and understanding when things are coming at you quickly. Makes sense that the guy could hit everything that came at him.
Let's go back to drumming very quickly on the point that we were making about the gifts, seeing the gifts there. Have you ever had an out-of-body experience playing the drums?
I have, yes. One time specifically, we were recording or writing the album Clumsy up at Duncan, the bass player's cottage. And we were working, I don't know, a month or something like that. Just, we were writing a few songs, but we had some songs that were finished. So we were just rehearsing them and just trying to get them ready. So, going into the studio, we could hit the ground running and get stuff done faster and be prepared. But we were just practicing and playing, we were actually writing at this point, and I don't know, I just remember playing a groove, and all of a sudden I saw myself from above, like up here. And where I was playing drums, I was in this kind of a solarium area, kind of like a sunlight, so there was glass above me so I could see the trees, and they were in the cottage. So I was like kind of detached in this little sunroom, and they were all set up in there. So I was like, what the hell's going on? I'm looking down on myself playing drums. And it was, then all of a sudden I was in myself and I started seeing things, seeing people and seeing stuff. And I zoned out, like I sat down on the couch and they thought I was having some kind of attack, but I was just literally like, somebody switched the channel halfway and I was seeing things, man. And I was like totally straight, no drink or drug in my system at all. And it was just the most bizarre. I don't know how long it lasted. Apparently I went to bed afterwards. Like I got up off the couch and went to bed and fell asleep because I was just done. So I don't know.
I understood the last time I heard this, that you were watching yourself play and that you just kept playing. You entered your body and kept playing, but you stopped because you said you were seeing people. What does that mean? Explain, please.
I was seeing people like in the room that were like not there. So I was trying to tell the guys and they were like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Forget this.
So you stopped playing. You stopped playing.
I got off the drum, sat on the couch, and I was seeing things on the couch. And then I went to bed right afterwards. It was really a ridiculous situation. I still can't explain it. Like I don't.
That's not ridiculous. Let's talk about that. So were you communicating with these beings, with these people?
No, I remember there was no communication, but at some point I saw a person walk in the room and that person gave me a look. And I felt like before when I saw them that they were, maybe it felt like it was another time. And, like a scene was happening of people where I was just seeing something that maybe the people in the area and 100 years before or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a flicker of a scene of humans. But this one guy walked in and looked at me and that was it. I remember that feeling like this is too much for me. And that's when I got up and went to bed. You can ask the other guys in the band that was they were there, and they can attest to me not being on anything. But wow, trippy stuff.
If that happens to you again, what would you do?
I've had other experiences, like I've been in hotels and woke up and people have been in the room, but they're not human beings alive. I don't know.
This happened since that first out of body?
I remember I was in a hotel, I think in New Orleans, and there was a person in the room and they were, I don't know if it felt like, because I woke up and they were in the room, but it was like 3:00 in the morning, but I had conversation with this person and they knew things about me and my family that no one else could know. So part of me thinks, and again, I wasn't on any alcohol or any drugs or anything. And I just felt like, well, maybe this is my own subconscious I'd been on the road a long time. Who knows, when you're kind of spent. But there was too much information that this guy was saying that knew about the rest of my family. So.
And do you remember everything that this person said, it is being said?
He just knew names, my parents, and just some personal stuff that only that I would know. But that's why I'm saying, well, maybe that's because if your subconscious feeds you information, obviously it's going to be information that you're aware of, and wouldn't that make sense? So I don't know. Maybe I'm lucky to have had those experiences, but
maybe you opened the portal. Maybe this is a portal of like we've had people on this podcast, especially recently, like Marguerite Rigoglioso, and she's founder of a mystery school, and she talked extensively about the non-physical and how the non-physical world dimensions really do exist. And
Yeah, well,
the details about it, but
it could be that. I mean, like I said, it felt like when you're changing channels on the UHF, and it's like, what the hell? All of a sudden, I got Buffalo. I'm watching cartoons on a Saturday.
I remember that. I remember in between channels before remote controls. You get like a glimpse of the Buffalo channel. Yeah.
Buffalo, they had the wicked cartoons on Saturday, right?
Sometimes you would just stand there holding that position so you can watch that cartoon as much as possible.
Yeah, man, because we just had this crappy CanCon like put together like the silver basketball or like Harrigan. That's the shit we got.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. So I have one last question for you, but I want to read something very quickly, a couple of lines, because I went online yesterday to see if there was like really compelling research on drumming and the experience of drumming. And I found something here. I'm going to look into it, but I'm going to read it here for the first time. And it's an article in medium.com. And it was based on neuroscience research. And they quote somebody who wrote a book. So in his book, I'm reading now. In his book, Shamanism, the Neural Ecology of Consciousness and Healing, Michael Winkelmann explains how, quote unquote, drumming synchronizes the frontal and lower areas of the brain, integrating nonverbal information from lower brain structures into the frontal cortex, producing feelings of insight, understanding, integration, certainty, conviction, and truth, which surpass ordinary understandings and tend to persist long after the experience.
Well, I mean, that's in conjunction with like learning difficult rhythms and making them feel easy. Like, cause there's a lot of weird math going on with polyrhythms and linear drumming and metric modulation and all that. Like all of these things that are in drums, it's very complex if you were to write down mathematically how they come around every 3 times or every 2 times, or you know what I mean? Like the repetitiveness where you can have your right hand's playing in 5, your left hand's playing in 7, and your foot's playing in 4. But just all these different concepts, which makes sense because you're it's like the rubbing this kind of stuff. Like that's a whole new level when you're starting to mess with time and just using faster tempos in grooves. It's kind of like math, just knowing a lot about math. And I'm terrible at math, but I understand how the numbers and the ideas flow together in drumming and how you can use odd notes all the time. And if you squish a bunch of odd notes together, it's even, like that's a whole, I love that
kind of math that you're doing. It's letting you see also other dimensions, dude. That's
maybe, I hope so.
Jeez. Okay. This has been wonderful. Kat Krieger, has been on the podcast, and he's an indigenous elder, also from Toronto. And he taught me about drumming as well in indigenous cultures. He said that if the reason why you listen to or you've seen a lot of drumming with one hand, single drum beats in indigenous culture, is because it harks to the memory of the child listening to the beat of his mother's heart in the womb. And that it's something that's very base in all of us, that beat exists before we're born. I don't know. I thought I'd share.
Well, and there's got to be a reason why the cerebellum, the idea of the cerebellum in your body is, that's how we learn balance with walking. But for some reason, the cerebellum's connected to your ear. So it's like, why would your ear need to hear balance or time? But then when you start playing drums or any kind of tempo, you're playing that connecting is going into your body. The cerebellum is reacting the same way as if you're walking. So that's probably why there's a huge connection with music and humans. Even when people say they have near-death experiences where they've passed away for a small amount of time, they hear incredible music that they never had heard before. You know, who knows? It's all connected in the rhythm of everything. I'm kind of look forward to, one of the few things I look forward to of dying is like hearing these wicked jams everybody's talking about.
So I want you to listen to episode 55. This guy named Tony Chicoria, he was a surgeon. I've mentioned him a lot of times in this podcast, but seeing music, he was hit by lightning, left his body. So he had a near-death experience. And anyway, the story that he gives is like, I get goosebumps right now just thinking about it. But one of the things that he took back with him, I won't tell you the story, you can listen to it. One of the things he took back with him is the music that got stuck in his head afterwards when he came back into his body. He says that's all for 12 years, he was absolutely just focused on learning what's in learning music in order to play it out for 12 years.
Yeah. Wow.
So he's a guy who would tell you about the music.
He didn't know how to play music, but he learned so he could explain it.
And he did it through piano. He composed a piano for 16 minutes or something. Crazy.
Amazing. Crazy. Yeah, I'll check that out. That's very cool.
Last question. Then I promise to let you go.
It's all good.
What is greatness to you?
Greatness is true love, like from another person. You know, if somebody really loves you to your core, what's better than that? Like my family, the love that I have for my kids, that's true greatness right there. Because it's something that me and my wife, we created it. It is ours. It's our life. But the love that we have for each other is the greatest thing that exists.
I will add something else to this that you mentioned to me before, and maybe you were shy about it now, but I'll mention it. We can edit it later if you want, if you don't want me to share it with the listener. Okay. But on that, you told me when you first started making an income as a rock star, first thing you did is you bought your family a house.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have anything. And like I said, when I was making $150 a week for the first time with OLP starting out, at that time we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment on Damask Avenue in Toronto and Weston Road. And me and my two brothers, my sister had moved out, but me and my two brothers in the one room and my parents out in the living room on a foam mattress. And like that gig couldn't have come at a better time. It was like looking pretty bleak. So, even though my parents were, eccentric in terms of their skills, I couldn't live with having them live like that when I had the means to make it better. So, I happily lived in the house there with them and eventually got to the point where I was able to buy my own condo after that. So that to me was, it was a necessity for them because I saw how their life improved all of a sudden for the next, couple decades. So, it was well worth it still to this day. And if you love your parents and if they're in a position, I'm sure, that it happens a lot where, kids that care about their parents try to take care of them.
Jeremy, thanks for sharing all of this. Thanks for sharing so much of your personal life. It really made sense, that you did. And the sharing of, your musical experience, and dude, time traveling with your musical experience.
Yeah, true.
I'm glad Mike put us together.
Man. Thank you, Luciano. Thank you so much.
Hey, it's Enrico Colantoni here, actor, director, and dedicated napper. Like what you heard today, there's more to come. Make sure to subscribe to Behind Greatness and learn about our live events at inspirenorth.com. You'll also find links to our social media right on our website, so be sure to give us a like and follow. Until next time, stay inspired.